Hello and welcome to Global Sanctuary for Elephants podcast, Global Rumblings. Global Sanctuary for Elephants, or GSE for short, is a non-profit organization with a mission to create vast safe spaces for captive elephants where they are able to heal physically and emotionally, often from very traumatic pasts. I'm your host, Nadia Mari, and I'll be taking you to the lush jungle of the Mato Grosso region in central Brazil, home of GSE's initial project, Elephant Sanctuary Brazil. Currently home to 6 female Asian elephants, lovingly referred to as the girls. Hi, welcome, and thank you for joining us again this week for Global Rumblings. We are again talking about Ramba, the sanctuary's 4th elephant, to call Elephant Sanctuary Brazil her home. So let's head on over to Brazil to say hi to Kat and hi to Scott. Hello, you two.
Hello, Miss Nadia. How are you?
Hello, I'm fine. I can hear we are still surrounded by bugs and chirpy chirps, the little blackbird.
I think it's the yellow and blackbird now.
Yeah, the yellow black one. He's over there quiet right now. I don't know why he's against the tree all quiet, but
it's nap time.
Oh, it's nap time. Talking about time, I can't actually believe that when we air this episode, it will be the middle of November. So the year is, yes. Yes, the year is ending so fast. It feels like I've just had a bit of a summer and a bit of an autumn. And so, yes, in 4 weeks' time, let's say it as it is, it will be Christmas. It's the holiday season. And Kat, maybe you can tell us, or Scott, you can tell us, or tell our listeners how we can, or how they can support the sanctuary with wonderful Christmas gifts.
Okay, let's see. Donations are always great, but we do have things set up that you can do donations and gifts in honor of somebody else. You can do just straight up donations, but we also have, you can buy somebody an Ellie Guardian membership and they'll get updates once a month for a year, specific updates on an elephant. You pick the one you want and those can get sent to them. We also have an online store that has a bunch of cute gear, everything from calendars and clothes to mugs and wine tumblers. It's one of my favorite. I don't mean to sound like I drink too much, but it's one of my really cute things that's in the store. I like it. So you can also buy things like that. All of the proceeds from our store go directly to Elephant Sanctuary Brazil and helping to take care of the elephants. So you can get a cute gift and still help to take care of the elephants. So there's a few options and all of them are greatly appreciated.
Those are all great ways. I'll add that's a great way to promote the sanctuary.
Sure.
It's not just about gift. It's about somebody seeing you with a t-shirt, somebody seeing you with an item. Strikes up conversation, allows you to introduce more what's going on, and just continues to amplify our following.
Yeah, we definitely have supporters who are like, I wear my elephant shirt every time I go. We have some people who are like, every time I go to the bar, I wear my elephant shirt. And they're like, you have no idea how many people will start a conversation and ask questions. So yeah, it is. A lot of people don't realize there's such a thing as a sanctuary for elephants. Others just don't even realize why you would need one. So they do make really good conversation starters and create an opportunity to educate in a way that's not super pushy or invasive or, pushing your own opinions on somebody else. It's a very passive way to go about that.
So we need to stop advertising t-shirts and start advertising icebreakers. Wear my shirt if you want to strike up that first conversation with the guy at the bar.
I'm a great fan of wearing your shirts when I'm actually traveling, and especially on the airport. I will I'll definitely wear a hoodie because I find airports very cold and the air condition, and I always make sure that I've got the hoodie sort of tucked that one can at least see your logo at the back, so that when I'm traveling around people can see that. And talking of mugs, Kat, that reminds me, we still need to set out and do a podcast mug, because that would be fantastic as well, with people maybe enjoying listening to the podcast and drinking their coffee or even their glass of wine, whatever, out of a great mug. So we'll have to get together and design a wonderful podcast mug. Okay, so now I'm trying to get back on track and herding fleas and herding cats. So last week we ended off with learning that unfortunately the elephant sanctuary in Tennessee wasn't able to take Ramba. She was, I'll say, outstaying her welcome a little bit at Park Safari, who very generously had offered to take her. But then after 6 months, when Tess, that is the elephant sanctuary, fell through, you had to make different plans because at the time, as you said, you were actually taking a break from the elephant world. So you've obviously, over the last episodes, joined you and learned how you found the sanctuary property. In 2016, when you opened in October to welcome Gita and Maya, why didn't Ramba come then a couple of months, weeks later? How come it took eventually then another 4 years for her to arrive in Brazil?
I think we need to start a drinking game now to deal with that. That was really tough time.
A hurtful question.
Yeah, that was, I was actually excited to talk more about Ramba, and then you brought up that story, and that's actually worse than her departure from the circus, in terms of bad memories.
Well, because that one we could laugh about because none of us got beat up. So
the reality is it goes back to the complexities of making a sanctuary happen. It doesn't start and doesn't happen overnight. We got the approval for Maya and Gita to come, an advance approval before the state agency was even ready because of the prosecutor in the Minas Gerais, the state where Maya and Gita were, made a special request for us to get advance permits to be able to receive them. We weren't technically ready for that. And there's no way we would have been able to get it. Even though we had space for 2 elephants, Ramba could not have been on that list because there was no special request for them to short circuit the permit process. So because the prosecutor made this request, we got the permit for Maya and Gita, but we still couldn't get the permit for another elephant until we finished the next 3 yards. During this time, we also had some...
Hold on 2 seconds. The reason being is because we have set, not that any zoo on the planet has this, but we have it set where we have a limit of elephants per hectare that we can have at the sanctuary. So until we built, the first 3 yards weren't going to be enough for 3 elephants. So we were going to need to have finished at least the 4th yard in order to meet the requirement for space for 3 elephants.
Mm-hmm. Right. I said 3 yards, but it's 3 additional yards because of that. And that goes back to them not having any sort of guidelines for what it means to build a sanctuary. So we told them what we were going to be doing, and this is what our guidelines would be when it's all said and done. And that was interpreted as, this is the space that you will need per elephant. That ended up changing, over time, but that was a process to go through that for them to understand, because everyone is concerned about the negative impact of the sanctuary. Are elephants going to be destructive? Are they going to destroy the habitat? All these speculations. So we had, sorry, I'm looking at this little blackbird again. We have to check him out to make sure he's okay. He's just sitting by the tree. I'm now concerned.
I will look epic.
He's just hanging out there. He's cleaning himself, but he's just hanging out in an unusual spot. So anyway,
Hurting, please.
So,
you got it. Back to the story.
While this is going on, and this whole permit process, and raising the money to build the fence, and building the fence, that all things that don't happen overnight. They take a long process, especially as a young nonprofit organization. We also had to deal with the importation issue because she's going to be coming from Chile. And if you're going to be importing, that's going to be a different set of requirements. And we've talked about this with respect to the African elephants that are currently waiting from Argentina. Is people have said, well, why is it taking so long when you're permitted to receive more elephants? We can receive elephants, yes, but we can't. That's one element of it. We have the permits to receive elephants, but then the other element is the importation requirement, the exportation requirement.
Which is all CITES. It's not the same thing.
Different division altogether, completely different faction of Brazil, government in Brazil. And then the other element of that is the sanitation requirements. which is separate from the CITES importation. CITES is making sure that the importation is legal, that you're not trying to illegally import a protected species. The other thing is the sanitation requirement, which is part of agriculture division, and they came up with requirements for what is required before they can authorize importation.
And of course, those didn't exist for elephants. So they had to be created specifically, essentially, for us to bring elephants from outside of Brazil into Brazil.
So that is a process also. And it starts off with saying, hey, we want to import an elephant. It's a captive elephant from Chile. We're working through the permit process. Can you tell us what the sanitation requirements will be? And they decided to go onto google.com and type in elephant diseases, and they made protocol for everything that is possible elephant-related disease.
Yeah, we had to either treat or test essentially for every possible elephant disease. And you're talking about things like elephant herpes, which is generally only prominent in younger elephants, elephant pox, which you can't actually test for unless there is some sort of active lesion. I mean, it was this giant list of things that wasn't actually possible to do. And we were like, but you don't clearly understand that this list is actually impossible. So that took a long time to straighten out.
Because we had to reply, and we had to gather the evidence to reply to all of these, and got supportive documentation, got supportive letters from internationally renowned veterinarians, elephant veterinarians. We replied, and then I think it was like 6 months later, they sent back another version.
Mm-hmm.
And the second version had things in there that also we couldn't do. One of them is they had to be vaccinated for hoof and mouth.
I think they wanted them to be vaccinated for anthrax.
Right, they had to be vaccinated for anthrax.
Which we didn't want to do, and there isn't a huge collective database about what happens with vaccinating elephants for anthrax. It's not a disease that's even here. Mm-hmm. But so it was just, they would take some stuff off and add stuff, and take some stuff off and add stuff. And not only was it months and months between each version, but then we started to be told, you have to stop telling them that they can't put these things on there. And it's like, but we can't do most of these things. So we're not trying to be difficult. And they're like, well, you're going to insult their egos. And it's like, well,
they're being idiots.
What do you want me to do? I can pretend somebody has a pox lesion or some lesion, I guess, and just send in a scrape of nothing. It's like, we're trying to be straightforward and educational at the same time, so we can get a realistic list of what is needed for these sanitary requirements. But it took a long time.
I think that was the frustrating part. There's no logic behind any of it. There's actually no scientific merit behind not any of them. With these things there was a handful that we said, okay, cool, it makes sense, understandable. But there was more than a handful that had no scientific backing at all.
What I don't quite understand, though, and listeners might be asking themselves the same question, Brazil had, prior to you wanting to import Ramba from Chile, they had already elephants. They had elephants in their zoos, they had elephants in circuses, so did that take so long as well? I mean, wasn't all this sort of medical questionnaire, sanitary requirements already in place? Because it's not as if you were actually importing the very first elephant into Brazil. I mean, Guido and Maya were already in Brazil, and they'd come from somewhere.
Yeah, but you're talking about elephants that were imported, and not just into South America, but in the United States as well. It was generally around a similar time frame, which is why most of the imported elephants, especially the Asian elephants, are all 50s, 60s, late 40s. And back in the day, nobody really cared. No, I mean, you're talking about the book Last Chain on Billy. That's the title, right? Mm-hmm. It talks about how lax the requirements were, but also how disposable elephants were considered at that time. You had an elephant who did not, quote unquote, behave or was an aggressive elephant, and you killed the elephant and replaced it. You just had another one shipped in. we have a tendency to look at things the way people would nowadays, but the reality was nobody cared at that point. You know, it was just this novelty of, wow, elephants are great. Let's bring in a bunch of elephants and put them in cages so that we can all stare at them. And that was that. So the lag between, you know, the 45, 50 years where we started to want to try to import the elephants into Brazil is, you know, a huge change. And now all of a sudden everything needs to be done properly, and we have CITES and to protect endangered species, which is great.
You know, these are good programs.
Which is important. Yeah.
It's just unfortunately not handled in the best way sometimes.
So then the other element to add to this, my trauma from these processes.
I'm not even sure where you're going. I'm scared.
When we first came to Brazil in 2013, we talked about the necessity to import elephants because we had already talked about Ramba back in 2013, and we met with IBAMA. And IBAMA is a division that is responsible for CITES, authorized for emitting CITES import and export permits. We weren't talking specifically to that division, but we were talking to somebody that is higher up in IBAMA. And they said, no problem. Yes, importations are going to be fine. These are all pre-convention animals. They're already proven in captivity. There's no illegal trade of this endangered species. All of this can be easily proven. So no, CITES will not be a problem at all. We've talked about our different categories, how we are registered in the state. We talked about there is no category, no for sanctuaries.
I know where you're going.
Yeah.
And now Kat needs glass of wine. Okay. So
because this was so stupid.
It's another one that, you know, the frustration, Nadia, is the lack of logic behind it. And
I know.
So we
I can relate to that.
Oh my God. So we meet with them and we say, we're going to start this process. This is what we're doing. They said, okay, cool. This sounds good. Send in the paperwork and we'll do an assessment. It should take 6 to 9 weeks. So 6 to 9 weeks goes by, 12 weeks go by, 16 weeks goes by. And what we find out is going on, they're doing an analysis to find out if the sanctuary has a bioinvasion risk. Are we going to be breeding elephants, releasing them into the wild of the Cerrado, and are they going to have a risk to the habitat? Are they going to have a risk to the
essentially? Are we creating an invasive species here?
But there's a couple of things that are illogical about this. One is that's not their job anymore. That has already been turned over to the states to determine. And the state has already given us our permit based on the exact same criteria.
Yeah.
So now they're having to do a 9-month assessment based on something that's already been done by the state, because the state is the one that's actually responsible for that. All they really needed to do was the CITES permit to determine, is this a legal importation or illegal importation? Where she was going to was actually a part of the state. So as long as the state gave us their approval, which we did have their licensing, that's really all they needed. So we wait and we wait and we wait. And then finally they come back and say, okay, cool, this has been great.
I think the little blackbird is feeling much better because I can hear him.
No, it's not. There's somebody else picking on him.
Oh.
And the yellow birds are trying to protect their nest. So we have little mini fights going on.
It's all go today.
Yeah, it's a little awry right now. Kat's going to go into... Well, I continued the CITES permit. Kat's going to check on our little friend. And she just flew away. Kat fixed it. And this is the magic that Kat does. She's wildlife rehab at its finest. So anyway, it's like 9 months in, and they said, good news, your permit's going to be emitted. You should have it within 2 weeks. Everything's been approved. You have guaranteed. We have determined that there is no risk of bioinvasion. Great. Perfect. 2 weeks go by. Oh, wait, we're sorry. Your permit has been denied. We're like, why has it been denied? Because of the classification that we are within the state. So there's the CITES regulations, and then there's another document that's a Portaria 93. And inside this Portaria, it's in addition to CITES, Brazil has a higher level of regulations to make sure that there is no illegal trade of endangered species. Again, really, really good. Fabulous that they have this. But only a few categories of animal managers are able to, or animal housing facilities are able to obtain CITES importation permits. And our category was not. We sat in their office with them and we told them what category we are. It's the first question that came up. 9 months ago, they could have told us, you can't do this because of Porteria 93. You can't do this. Why didn't you tell us in that first meeting that you can't do this? So now it's been denied. We go back to them and say, well, okay, help us find a solution for this. You tell us you want to help, want us to work. What exceptions can we do? What can we do? How can we do this? They said, you have to change your category. We immediately contacted the state agency. We immediately looked to see what other category we fit into, because again, there's no sanctuary category. They said, well, why don't you list yourself as a zoo? Because we don't fit those criteria. And why don't you, fit yourself over here? Because we don't fit those criteria either, because you don't have a sanctuary criteria anywhere. So we're kind of,
zoos require breeding. There's like big reasons that we can't fit into these existing categories. It's not like little things, it's pretty significant things.
And the big thing with them is, with not having breeding to show there's no bioinvasion, but then they want us to be into a category that requires breeding, which then increases the risk of bioinvasion. There's all these chaotic things. So we finally go back and we change our category, and we're in the process of filing that paperwork. Of course, this is going to take multiple months, but we get pre-approval for the change of category. IBAMA then emails us and said, don't worry, we're going to be changing a Porteria 93. You do not have to change your category. We are going to emit Ramba's permit. Sweet. So we go ahead and stop that process because actually the category we were in was the best fit for us. And then they emitted the permit. And then after emitted the permit, then they came up with this new category, this new addendum to this Porteria 93. And when there was nothing in the addendum to that talks about authorizing our category for importation of endangered species under CITES regulation. So we then had to go start the process again for changing category. And things like this is why it goes from you're going to have a permit in 9 months to 9 weeks to a year and a half, 2 years later.
I mean, the one review was 9 months all on its own, and it was a review that wasn't supposed to remotely be necessary. And even that one step pushed it back almost a year without even all of the other stuff that happened. And it was all paperwork related. It was just bureaucracy, red tape, nonsense that, it's one of those, we know our requirements are higher than everyone else's. And
we definitely held to a higher standard, without a doubt. There's much higher expectation. I mean, zoos get away with so much here.
Yeah. This reminds me of the scene out of the book Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy with the Vogons. Oh, how frustrating. Did you see that? Or did you read the book or see the film? They're sort of like taking out the file and stamping it and then, And it is very interesting because definitely from your supporters and also in the group, in your support group on Facebook, that when there is a rescue coming or they hear, or, there could be an elephant coming, lots of questions are, why is it taking so long? How can this paperwork take so long? And then it's so frustrating that it takes, so many years. And personally, that is something I find very difficult to understand, especially as you say, it's so illogical. And then in the end, there's an animal waiting, she's over 60, she's in poor health. And then you are at the mercy of these, the bureaucrats.
Yeah, I mean, and there are elephants that don't make it to sanctuary because of some nonsense like this. And I call it nonsense. Again, the reasons behind it are solid. It's just the way things go, which is not. But, with Ramba, she had been at the safari park for less than a year when we had Gail go. And we actually had a friend of ours that was a flight attendant go with her because she didn't speak Spanish at all, which was clearly going to be a problem. And our friend brought her husband, who had been a longtime supporter and loved Ramba. And they went to get blood on her. And when we did blood, found out that she was early stage kidney failure.
Oh, gosh.
And there had been 2 other elephants that were in a similar situation, one at a sanctuary and one at a zoo, with similar blood values, and both died within a year. The zoo elephant actually died within a couple of months. And Dr. Richardson agreed, gave her about a year to live. So you're talking, we already know she's got this short timeline. We're trying to do everything we can to make sure she can live as long as she can so she can get to sanctuary. I mean, traditional medicine doesn't offer a lot in that regard. There's a lot of medicines you would use in people that you cannot use in elephants, or nobody's ever tried. You certainly can't do things like dialysis. None of that exists for them. So, you work with herbs and essences and homeopathy, and she had really strict diet restrictions. I mean, down to like individual fruits that she wasn't allowed to have, and vegetables that she had to have that were diuretics and what have you. And there was a lot that went into trying our hardest to make sure that she could live long enough to get to sanctuary. And she barely did. I mean, she was only here for a few months, not to say that she would have lived as long if she had gotten here earlier. It is that thing of a lot of times when elephants aren't well and they get to sanctuary, sometimes they are comfortable enough to drop that protective barrier and stop fighting their illness so much, and they are more at peace with the whole situation. And we've seen it repeatedly at different sanctuaries where they do die shortly after. So there's no guaranteeing she would have lived as long as she did if she had gotten there earlier, but she definitely would have had a better chance. And that's one of the things that's so frustrating, is that she was so phenomenal. Not that they don't all deserve sanctuary, because every captive elephant deserves a better life than they have. But we've talked about it before. Ramba really was very special, and there was just something about her, and it would have been so nice for her, and not just for her. I mean, we just talked about it the other day, wondering what her and Gita would have been like together, because of that grandma energy that they had. And they both had this presence about them, like they knew more, that there was just something else. And for those 2 to have been able to spend any time together, or for Hannah to have built up a longer relationship, and you never know what's going to happen, but there is that feeling that it sucks that possibly some of that was taken away for reasons that really weren't necessary.
Yeah, very, very difficult, but it does shed light on the process, which unfortunately is then out of your hands in the end. Although yes, it is illogical in some areas, but you can't change it in the end. You just have to wait until the paperwork is sorted out, even it is then to the detriment of the animal you want to rescue. We've got 10 minutes left, so we do know that Ramba does arrive at the sanctuary, and maybe in the next recording we can then talk about her few months that she did have at the sanctuary. We did talk a couple of episodes ago about her relationship with Hannah. Maybe we can end on a slightly happier note. I mean, it was happy that Ramba did arrive at the sanctuary, so maybe just let followers know or listeners know what is happening at the moment. It's rainy season. The girls enjoying lots of mud baths and rumble parties in the rain. What's happening at the sanctuary at the moment?
I just commented earlier today I love how they just trumpet randomly. you look out and look on the camera, look down the pasture, because we can hear the trumpet echoing through the valley, but the elephants are far away. There's no noise pollution here. So any noise like that, as you already know with the birds, you hear everything. But to hear the trumpet, and she turned on the camera and looked over, and it's just 3 elephants standing side by side for no apparent reason trumpeting, which is lovely and beautiful. And
somebody was feeling inspired. I don't know which one. When I looked, they were just all dusting and acting like nobody had made a sound. So I don't know who it was. I cut you off before. Were you going to say something?
This is Guijamina's first rainy season with you. So how is she?
No, she had full rain season before.
Yeah, she's been here
Okay.
just over.
Yeah, she was here for over a year, so she already went through the rain season. And I don't remember when
the
they
second.
arrived. They arrived at the beginning of the dry season, I think, and then March, April, something like that, beginning, end of the rain season. And then she definitely had her fill of mud parties last year. A lot of mud parties with Guijamina last year.
Yes. A lot of her getting used to how squishy it was, how much it stuck, how little muscle strength she actually had, that when, something slippery, she was like, holy cow. It's amazing how little strength they have when they arrive. That slipping around in a mud puddle was definitely one of those things she had to get used to, but she did, for sure.
Yeah, a few weeks ago we were talking about with our team in the United States, with some of the Facebook posts and stuff, and everyone's just a little bit in the doldrums. There's just no one's, people, chickens, dogs, cats. No one's really happy before the rain comes. But once the rain comes, everybody comes back to life. I mean, everything just, and it's not like it's a huge drop in temperature. It's not like it's 20 degrees cooler. It's just a few degrees cooler.
It's not like it's a terrible dry season. I mean, there are so many places that have much worse. There's still stuff they can eat in the habitat. I mean, the one section of the yard that was cut early, I mean, that was still even green. But it is that there's just something to not having rain that has this weird impact that after a little while, it's like, even the smell of it, like the first tiny storm where it wasn't even a big one, but it was enough that you get that smell of like hot, wet dirt. But I know people understand what that is. It's the same thing like hot cement the first time it rains, and you just have that smell.
Oh yeah, on the roads. Yeah.
I think there's just even something about that smell that like allows everybody to take a deeper breath and be like, okay.
One thing that's interesting from an elephant management perspective is during the dry season, it's really, really difficult to do any footwork because their feet, everything they become much harder. Mm-hmm. It's like trying to carve stone. Really, really, really difficult to do anything with. So we just kind of let them go. And then the rain season comes, and then you have to wash away layers of mud and then more layers of mud and more layers of mud to finally get to their feet. Their feet are much easier to trim, but it takes a while to find them.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons at the end of the rainy season, we do clean up with everybody's feet right before, because we know how hard everything gets. And their cuticles dry up. And, if you do cuticle work when they're super dry, you can tear the cuticles, and clearly that's not comfortable for humans or elephants. And no matter how much cuticle oil you put on, it just doesn't matter after a point. So we do a lot of cleanup at the end of the rainy season. And then, of course, if they have foot issues in the meanwhile, like Lady always gets foot care. It doesn't matter, rainy season, dry season, but she also gets foot soaks on an almost daily basis. Okay. So
we're still limited what we can do with her feet.
Sure.
But it is always have to be cautioned, because when you do fresh trimming, and they dry out too fast, like they do in the dry season, they actually start to split and they crack. So we just have to be a little more careful.
All of the little things that go into everything we do.
Yeah. Well, when I come and visit you again, I'll definitely make sure that I come during the rainy season, because I love the rainy season. As you say, everything bursts back to life, and the smell. So I'll let you go, because we've only got a couple of seconds, or not a couple of seconds, but a couple of minutes before we get cut off. So thank you again for taking time out, and until we catch up next time, take care, and goodbye.
Thank you, Nadia. Thanks for bringing us down memory lane. At the beginning of this episode, I wasn't sure where we were going to go with it, and I completely forgot. I had tuned out.
Thank you for depressing me today. It was awesome.
How difficult that stretch was. All right, take care.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
So we've come to the end of this week's episode. We hope you enjoyed it, and we will be linking up to all the presents and gifts Kat mentioned in our show notes. Take a look. And yes, until we catch up next time in 2 weeks, take care and goodbye.